Welcome back to the Baseball Blue Book podcast. This is Eric Wilbenaw, president of the Baseball Blue Book. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Had a wrap up of the World Series. Congratulations to the Houston Astros for winning this year. What a great series. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that today. Today we are welcoming Coach Stu Fritz from Hope College. Stu, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Eric. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Hey, we appreciate you joining us. Why don't you take a couple minutes and just introduce yourself and a little bit of background?
Well, I grew up in a small town in northeast Iowa and played every sport that we had at our school there, and then attended Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa, and was fortunate enough to be able to play two sports there. Little Colorado as a grad assistant, and then at age 26 was kind of in the right spot at the right time. Was privileged enough to be able to come to Hope College. So this is my 30th year here in Dutchville in Holland, Michigan, and it's been really, you know, as I reflect on it, it's really been a dream come true to be in a place like this for as many years as I have been.
Wow, 30 years. That's awesome. You know, it's funny. We were just talking before the episode. You're good buddies with Coach Nyman, and I think I think it's his 34th year with Salisbury, and so it's really neat to see coaches embrace where they're at and excel where they're at. Before we go into, you know, kind of your whole journey, I want to kind of touch on that. How do you know that Hope was really the place that you wanted to be? I mean, it's a long time to be in one place. A lot of people always are looking for something that's maybe different or better at times. How did you know this was where you wanted to be?
Yeah, and I don't know if I did immediately. You know, going back a little bit, we played Hope in football in the fall of 1985. I was a sophomore at Wartburg, and Hope traveled to Waverly. Holland's a really, really wonderful little town. But I don't know that we knew right away that this is where we wanted to stay. We had a couple chances to go back to Iowa, and I think the biggest thing here is the people. We just have incredible people here, and out of our institution and what it stands for, and you know the emphasis that we have on academics and athletics, but I think after a 30-year career, it's the people and the relationships that have probably been the most meaningful for us.
Man, that definitely makes a huge impact on people, and I think it has something to do with finding the right place to play as a player, and we'll talk about that as well, because so many coaches talk about finding the fit, and it sounds like you found the fit at Hope College. So let's take a step back. We are both we're both Iowa boys, grown up in the great state of Iowa. Always love talking with another guy that kind of understands the Iowa language and just kind of the idea of the work ethic and everything that comes with being in Iowa. There's very few of us, but I think it's a very powerful few, and they're spread across the country, and it's pretty exciting. So talk about, you said you were a two-sport player in high school. Why did baseball, or actually not in high school, but in college, why was baseball really the sport that you pursued?
You know the Iowa thing with baseball that you can play high school baseball. First of all, in the summer, which we're one of the few states that, maybe the only state that still allows that. But we could play high school baseball after our 8th grade year. So I was able to play 5 years of high school baseball, along with football, basketball, track, and I played 1 year of golf. That was kind of a train wreck. But I think when I got to college, being a two-sport guy, baseball is just kind of what took off for me. I've had some incredible mentors in my life in terms of getting me into athletics and getting me into sport and really getting me into my occupation. My dad being one of them. He was a banker, but started off coaching and then officiated for 35 years. My brother was, one of the best athletes that I've met. He was at Iowa State and then at Wartburg. And then my elementary PE coach, he was my basketball coach. Paul Youngblood is his name. Just a huge influence to me for going into physical education and just wanting to be a baseball coach. I think that's what kind of propelled me into getting into this profession.
It's amazing the amount of interviews that I've had with coaches. It's so, and it shouldn't be amazing now, but what I hear consistently through each one is the impact that a young coach had, or a coach when the coach was younger, how much impact a coach had in their life, and how it steered their entire life and where they are today. Talk about how, and you might not have even thought about that before, but the impact that you have on kids today is something that's obviously going to be with them forever. How do you handle that? How do you deal with that? How do you prepare for that?
I think you look at that and, you go back to the question and you say, well, how do you measure success? Right. And as a coach, I think oftentimes, or maybe too oftentimes, it's done with wins and losses. And wins and losses, when you're between the lines, that's why you're there. But outside the lines, it's 100% what we can do for that young man. And I think in turn, after this many years of doing it, what you realize is while you're trying to make an impact on that young man, it's the impact they have on you and your family.
Yeah.
So it really is reciprocated back with the kids that you have in your program or the kids that you have in class or whatever the case may be. But I think former players' weddings, former players' children, just relationships that have been built over a 30-year period with kids that played for you is truly what I will take away from this game and take away from this occupation as things that I treasure the most.
Here's a question that I typically can't ask to younger coaches, and so kind of reserve it for the older coaches. Knowing the impact that you're going to have on these players and the lifelong relationships that you tend to have with the players, does that affect how you recruit?
Yeah, we could get into that whole thing, but I think what we do is we look for ideal teammates and kids that are going to fit our culture as much as we do talented kids. Now, you can great teammate yourself right to the bottom of the league. You have to have some kids that have talent as well.
Good point.
But I do think that it does affect who we're trying to target. And I also think that after 30 years of doing this, we think that we can fix about anything in terms of relationships and how kids are going to fit into our program. And so you just are looking for kids that are going to be great teammates. Are they going to allow themselves to be loved? Are they going to develop trust? Are they going to continue to work at their craft so they can be trusted and loved?
Yeah.
We talk about love a lot in our program with the type of we want to have in our culture.
Expand, Coach. Hold on here. I'm going to pause it. Paused.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think through the recruiting process, we're just trying to find ideal teammates that are going to fit our culture. We talk a lot about having kids allowing themselves to be loved, gaining the trust, asking kids what they want their legacy to be. So we use the L word. We talk about love in our program, and we want kids to buy. Culture's a moving target, and it's not always reciprocated or it's not always the same from year to year.
Yeah.
But just having kids that are able to be loved and want to be a part of your culture is something that we're looking for when we recruit kids into our program.
Go into some more detail with that. When you say you're looking for kids that are wanting to be loved, that certainly is a character trait. Talk about what does that look like in kind of a real life scenario?
Yeah, I guess if I could expand on that more, one of the things that we do in our program is we keep a smaller roster. We do not have a JV team. We're very upfront and very honest about kids in the recruiting process. So we make cuts. Um, that's the toughest day of the year for our staff. But we want kids to be able to come in and accept their role. We want them. My good friend Pat Murphy, who's a softball coach at Alabama, talks about mudita and vicarious joy through the success of others. We want our kids to be able to experience joy from their teammates. And I think the only way that you can do that is to allow yourself to be vulnerable. We talk a lot about vulnerability. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, which in turn I think allows you to be loved. If you come in and you're not willing to buy into whatever the culture of the system dictates, then I think it's very difficult to fully jump in and allow yourself the trust that you deserve. So we just talk a lot about allowing yourself to be loved and allowing people to get to know you, allow people to walk a mile in your shoes. And we do different things from year to year to help our kids really get to know each other. And some of that, we script that, and then we hope after we script that and we talk about it, that the culture takes care of it from there.
It's funny how when you talk to baseball coaches, so much of the conversation is about outside the lines. And you referred to that, right? Between the lines, it's about winning and losing. It's about the performance and how you do on the field. But so much of it has to do with outside those lines. And this is a unique way of kind of what you're talking about is the vulnerability. It provides the ability to be loved, scripting some of those things. Give an example of some of success of something that you, maybe it wasn't there. Some of the scripting and some of the things that you did and your coaching staff did propelled someone to a place that you saw success.
Well, fortunately, I think there's a lot of examples of that. I'll get a little bit more specific. One of the things we did last year, and I took this from somebody, Eric, so this is not a Stu Fritz invention, but we took 4 consecutive Fridays and we had our kids get up. And the 3 things that we asked each kid to talk about is talk about something that they've lost, talk about something that you've loved, and talk about something that you're afraid of. And we have our coaches go first. And for us, it's important that the coach is vulnerable right there. So right there, I think our kids get to see a little different side of our coaching staff. And then from there, we had our seniors do it. And there were often times where there weren't many dry eyes.
That's awesome.
And my belief with that is if we can get our kids to walk a mile in the shoes of their teammates, it makes it that much more difficult to quit on each other. Together. So one example of that, I guess, would be we had a young man in our program who came in as a freshman in the fall. And, everybody's sizing everybody up and trying to figure out who's who. And to be honest, he just wasn't very well liked. And that's hard for me as a coach to watch because we thought this young man was going to be a really good player.
Right.
And in our fall meetings, I was just very honest with him and just looked at him and said, there's not many of our teammates that appreciate you being around. And he said, I know. Can you help me with that?
Awesome.
And I think that's one of the things that
that's pretty neat that hearing this from you, because a lot of coaches, from the pandemic and what happened with COVID, kind of a lot of coaches had to figure out how to do this, right? Because over the last few years, there was a lot of isolation. There was a lot of emotional and psychological challenges that these kids had to go through, right? And it sounds like you've been doing that for a very, very long time. So was it kind of like, business as usual for Hope College because it's what you've always been doing? Or did you see that was absolutely something that was even more necessary now because of some of the things that kids were going through.
Yeah, I don't think it was business as usual because, we were all in such a state of turmoil really without having our normal activities.
Yeah.
But I've said it over and over again. I was super impressed with how our kids handled it. Oftentimes better than the head coach or the coaching staff, to be honest with you. Um, so it's just something that I think is important. I mean, it's important in a family, right? We talk about unconditional love and we talk about empathy and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
We want our kids to, to show that within our program. And not everybody's going to be best friends, but
Right.
if you can at least accept and accommodate, be an influencer, those kinds of things, it will help. So COVID was hard for all of us. It was
Yeah.
hard not being able to compete. It was hard watching seniors not being able to have their last season. And I guess I've never really thought, do some of the core things in our program, did that help us carry us through? It probably did. It probably did.
I would imagine, right? Because I think a lot of people, when things just are going normal, and you don't have these type of challenges, if you don't have a way of dealing with them from the beginning, you're trying to figure it out as you go, and there's a lot of casualties, and we've seen that, right? We've seen it across the board, the casualties of our kids, but I think what you had is something that it really showed empathy, right? You were able to, when you kept saying, walk in the shoes of one of your teammates for a mile, that brings that empathy. It brings compassion. It brings a lot of things that it brings selflessness, right? I think that's really the key. It's no longer looking at what what's mine and how do I get mine. It's where is my teammates and where is it? One of the things comes up a lot in these interviews is the transition from the individual nature of baseball at the high school and travel ball and elite programs to the college program, right? And you've already kind of alluded to how you do this and bring the family in and the family atmosphere. What are some of the biggest challenges? And I probably already listed those to you, but the challenges of getting them from that individual so that they can get to that next level to now kind of pulling them back and going, this is really how we focus here at Hope College. It is a family and we win as a family. Talk a bit about that transition for players.
Yeah, and that's probably a long answer to that question, but I think it starts off, Eric, where, the funnel used to be a certain size in the recruiting process, and that funnel has grown, 3 times with the number of kids that are playing travel ball, which I think is outstanding.
Yep.
But the number of kids to pick from has grown. So, how do we narrow that funnel and who's going to drop down? And when I say drop down, I mean that in a positive note. Who's going to drop down into our program where academically they're ready for Hope College, they can do it financially, and they think that it's going to be the right fit. And when you talk about fit, I think you talk about social and academic fit, you talk about community and people and financial and all these different things. But it's, trying to find the right 8 to 10, if you will, kids that are going to make up a recruiting class has become much more tough. And you're trying to recruit personalities, you're trying to recruit talent, and just finding how do you carry on a tradition. And then once you get them here, the challenge is you can't play 32 guys at the same time. So they have to understand what their role is going to be, and they have to understand that number 1 and number 32 are equally important, and that your role might not be quite as great between the white lines, but it might be great in the clubhouse or in the dugout or on the bus or in the weight room. We ask for leadership from every single level. So I think a lot of prongs to that answer, but we tell our kids this often too, Eric, and that it's a privilege and not a right. It's a privilege to be a college athlete and not a right that you have. Yeah. So we want kids to understand that and just be genuinely happy to be a part of our program and to realize that it's something bigger than themselves.
That's a great point, Coach. And you brought up something about the funnel is there's more kids to choose from. A lot of times you think that would make it easier, right? You got more to choose from. We can hand select the people that we want, but it has made it more difficult. And I think what it's done, what I've noticed is I think the quality of baseball at the collegiate level has really expanded, and it's not just expanded at the higher levels. It's expanded all the way down to the D3s, the NAIAs, the JUCO. There's good baseball everywhere, and I think it has to do with that emphasis of building up the players at the lower levels. What makes Coach Fritz different beyond what you just brought up? Because I've heard a lot of things that are unique. The focus on the selflessness, the love. But what do you, if someone was to ask you, hey, Coach, what makes you unique? What makes you a special coach? What would that answer be?
Well, there's probably some positive things and there's probably some negative things too. I'm competitive to a fault. And I say when I lose that trait, I'll know that it's time to be done. And going back to what you said, we don't do lip service. We don't give lip service to the term family. We want kids to genuinely want to be in our program. And I'm very upfront. I'm very honest. So, when kids come into my office, we try to speak the truth the very best that we can. We don't beat around the bush. But I don't know if there's things that make me unique other than I've done it a long time. And I tell kids all the time, you're 10 times smarter than me, but maybe, just maybe, I have a little bit of wisdom after doing this for 35 years. So I think I draw on experiences and I look at the things that I've learned from kids that are in our program. And one other thing, Eric, if you allow me for just a second.
Sure.
I had our son played for me for 4 years, and wasn't one of our best players. He was a very talented player, but didn't get a lot of time. Was a leader in the weight room, a leader in the clubhouse, leader in the dugout. And boy, the things that I learned from having him in our program that probably are coming more to the forefront now than they did when he was here. I didn't always have to ask the tough questions with my team because I kind of knew the answer to it. And I think that continued to create a culture that was pretty rock solid in terms of off the field, on the field, academically. So I think my ability to listen to that and to learn, I don't know if that makes me unique, but I also know that, in year 30, when I started, it was for sure player over person. I wanted to prove to everybody that I belonged at this level. Now, after 30 years, I think you don't really care what people think. It's more the person over the player. And the success that we've had is 100% based on the type of kids that we've had in our program.
Experience does bring things that you can't teach. You can't teach experience. You can't teach, the things that you go through the day to day. You talked about being open and honest. I think that is, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking that is a unique trait because there's so much things going on with the early commits, right? And early commits only put coaches in a really bad situation because they're looking. It's hard to know a 14, 15-year-old kid is a good fit for your program. And if you find someone else that might be a better fit, all of a sudden, are you being open and honest by doing what you did by early committing to someone? I think that's a very unique, trait. I personally, I'd rather know what you feel right up front than to learn about it later down the road and then have this bad taste in my mouth. I think that is something that's a unique thing. But it sounds, talk about your son being on there again, because you said there was maybe a transition that came through that process. You never really had to worry about knowing what was going on or what the clubhouse was or how people felt about things. Was that because of the openness of your son and you kind of implemented that kind of idea going forward? Or talk more about what you just brought up in there.
Yeah, it was choose Hope College. My wife works here as well. And, to come to an institution that he's grown up on the bus, he grew up, he spent his entire life here. His mom and dad both worked here. So it was fun for me to watch him establish himself as his own person,
Mm-hmm.
to do what he did in terms of, work ethic and that kind of thing, academically and in our baseball program. And we definitely had barriers. It wasn't like he's running to tell his dad. That wasn't it at all. But we're best friends, and I cherish that. And there was some openness that really, I would say, he created even with the rest of our team, with our captains who were his best friends. He got married in August, and it was our culture on display. We had 30 Hope baseball players. It was one of the best nights of my life. But I do think it helped me understand boundaries of our players versus our coaching staff. It helped me understand not to impose my will all the time on our players, to understand what they wanted with what we thought was necessary, and then trying to find that balance. And he was a huge part of that for me, because not often, but I would bounce some things off of him, and
Yeah.
he would tell me what he thought. And I do think that helped establish some of those boundaries and helped us just to be a little bit more effective and a little more streamlined.
It's awesome. Awesome. Looking back in your career, what was the biggest success in your mind?
I don't want this to sound like everybody's answer, but we've had. I look at my career and I say it's a series of moments. We have good moments and we have bad moments. I think some of the greatest moments are obviously milestone type of wins, weddings, the birth of former players' children. And then some of the bad moments are when you've done it this long, there's going to be some death in there.
Yeah.
There's going to be, just some bad things that happened. But it's with great joy that I can say I've done it at an institution that I believe in. And if, I tell kids all the time, if this institution isn't right, then I'll help you find some place that is.
Right.
But it's just, it's to do it at a place like Hope, in a community like Holland, and the type of kids that we attract are just fantastic young men, and that the same thing. But after 30 years, it's a place I believe in. There's been some incredible highs and some incredible lows. And one of my good friends, Tim Corbin at Vanderbilt, talks about that you cannot live in euphoria and you can't wallow in misery. You have to find your middle.
Yeah.
And we've kind of adopted that because as a coach, I think oftentimes the winning is going to hurt more than the losing is going to hurt more than the winning is good. And just find your middle.
That's a great point. A lot of coaches, Corbin has been quite the influencer on a number of coaches over his years, and it's one of that I've heard before. It's funny just to kind of summarize what you said there. The moments. I love your statement of your life is just a compilation of moments that you've lived, and some good, some bad, and finding that medium, finding where that balance is really key. I was watching a show the other night, and I told it was Amazing Race. I don't know if you ever watch Amazing Race, but there were a few of the teams that blew through some of the challenges, and you could tell they were just trying to get it done. And then there were ones that really struggled, and it took them a long time to get that challenge done. And when they finally accomplished it, the joy of accomplishment was so much greater than the joy of the accomplishment of the other teams that did it right away. Apply that in the college realms in baseball, because baseball is all about failure. And so when you think about having to go through failures in order to find those successes or the great moments in your life, what are you as a coach, and you're seeing this with your players, How do you utilize those moments and take kind of the baseball, the world of baseball, and translate that into the world of life and moving forward?
Yeah, the failure part of baseball is, the team that leads is what we generally. I think you find some of your greatest moments in the smallest victories.
Yeah.
And it's, the personal victories that you have with, seeing a kid through to graduation, or helping them through tough times in their life. It's baseball is so much more about the wins and losses. And I know I've said that a lot, and I love to win, absolutely love to win, but it's just the human touch,
Yeah.
I think. And I think you realize that more the longer you do this. And it goes back to what I said earlier with, you're going to put the person over the player, and you need to coach that person. And that's hard to do sometimes when you take a strike three in a huge moment or something like that. So being able to separate, the between the lines and the outside the lines, and it's okay to hold them accountable. There's no doubt that we, between the lines, we have high expectations for our players, and we want them to be able to perform.
Yep.
And then outside the lines, we have high expectations as well, but it has nothing to do with winning and losing on the field. And I don't know if that answered your question, but just impact that I think culture and community and institutionally can have on kids. And we just, as coaches, are fortunate enough that we can kind of get to steer the boat on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. When we talked about so many things today, and I've got a number of little catchphrases, from the moments to the, you just mentioned another one with focusing on the person and not the player. I really like that one. Kind of the transition from player to person to player is key to success as a coach. What's advice that you would provide? And I know there's so much, and that's really what these episodes are about, is kind of a compilation of advice. But that one piece of advice that you would give to kids that are wanting to play at the collegiate level?
Yeah, I think simply to find the right fit. And the fit is a lot of things, but I think the social fit probably comes even above the academic fit, because the academics won't happen if you're not socially right.
Yeah.
And I think coming off COVID right now, it becomes even more important. Socially, it's right. Do you have people there that you can count on? Do you have people there that are going to love you? Are you going to be able to make friends there? So finding that fit, the baseball part there, like you said earlier in the conversation, there's good baseball at every single level.
Yeah.
And it's gotten nothing but better. You mentioned the quality of play at the lower levels. It's gotten way better in my time here. So find people that you can trust, find the right fit for you socially, academically, and then the baseball part comes along with facilities and people and community and financial and spiritual for some. So it all is a part of the package.
Yeah. I think that's fantastic advice. And I think to kind of expand on that, because the programs, there's so many good programs, I think there's almost 1,800 programs that offer baseball. There's a fit. And I think I've heard a coach, I think Nyman actually said this, there's a place for every player that wants to play. And finding your fit is really key, and spending more time focused on the non-baseball attributes of that place is probably more important than simply the baseball. Advice: 30 plus years doing this in one place, that's impressive, and it also it allows you to have the opportunity to be more of a mentor to a lot of these young coaches that are coming up. And I know that you've been part of the ABCA, so that certainly gives you the ability to give advice and information to these coaches out there. But what would be a piece of advice that you could provide to these coaches today that that maybe are just getting into the college coaching realms, maybe the ones that have been there for a while that's going through some struggles or contemplating looking at new places to maybe to go. What's some advice that you'd provide to them?
I think just doing the very best job you can in the position that you have currently. Um, it's, to continue to want to climb the ladder, whether that be divisionally or one program to the next. Just do the very best that you can for kids in the program in the position that you are. Um, the self promotion stuff, that's going to happen if you do a good job.
Yeah.
That's going to happen on its own. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be out looking for better positions. But I say this all the time when I was an elementary PE teacher. Each kid deserves the very best that we have to give on any given day. And so if you're in a position that you don't necessarily love, the kids that you're dealing with every day, they don't care.
Yeah.
All they care is that you can give them the very best that you have to give each day. And I think if you're willing to give the very best that you have to give each day, you're going to find that the place that maybe you didn't think was so great might be okay. And then you're going to get, reciprocated back from the kids that you're trying to mentor and make an impact on, and they end up making an impact on you.
I think your advice is probably the best advice you can give to anyone in any position anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and I think I am in need of advice way more often than I should be giving it, and my wife helps me with that. My wife, my life partner, 33 years, she's at Hope College and she's very involved in our program. And going back to the question that you asked me a long time ago, what do I think makes me unique? I don't know if it makes me unique, but I think it makes us unique in that my wife is extremely involved in our program. She's the team mom, whether you want it or not. And she's a coach's daughter. She played in college. She loves our athletes at Hope, and she gets to work with them through the admissions office.
That's awesome. I'll tell you, you could probably take what you just said there and give it as advice across the board, though, because if you are doing the very best that you possibly can in any position that you have, good things will always happen. I mean, short term, it may be tough. You might not be in the right place. People that are around you might not appreciate what you're doing. That doesn't matter, right? You have to have that attitude of I'm going to do the best. And I want you to quote what you said when you were early elementary PE teacher. Giving the kids their very best at any particular moment. I want you to restate that.
Yeah, I just think, I have an opportunity to work with our physical education teachers here at Hope College. We have others on our mind. Young people don't care. So I just simply try to hold true for myself too, that every kid that we come in contact with, every player, deserves the very best that we have to give each day.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's because, we might not love where we're at that particular time, but my feeling that everybody is the best that we have to give each day.
It's also, I'm sitting here thinking about what you said. That is not an easy task. I think going into the world of coaching it might sound great coming out of college because maybe your attitude is I could do it better. But I think what people really have to understand about being a coach is the selflessness of what coaching is all about. It literally is only about these players and the development of what's going on. That's really a tough level to reach, and you. I think you'd be the first to say you still need advice. Where do you get your advice, Coach?
Oh man, from lots of different sources. I have so many mentors in this game. John Casey at Tufts, who was at Tufts, who is now semi-retired, has been a mentor for me. Tim, a big mentor for me. Tim Corbin at Vanderbilt. The beauty of baseball is you have friends across every level, and it's a pretty tight knit. get lots of advice from people right here at Hope College. Our head
That's great.
football coach is a good friend of mine. We commiserate together. So all the time about deserving the very best that you have to give each day. Well, sometimes that's not very good. We have to do an attitude adjustment for ourselves
Yeah.
um, to try to figure out. And also, you have to be thick-skinned. Um, it's coaching is hard. I think it's harder right now than it's ever been. But I also think that makes the joy that we find in it even that much greater.
I wouldn't. I couldn't agree more. Right. It's all, almost back to my statement about the failures. When things are difficult and then you have success, it's the success is so much sweeter. With the challenges or the failures or whatever it might be in life, it's you can really cherish those times that you do have success, and after the number of years you've had such, the ups and downs, and be able to have that mindset of, the small moments is really how you kind of you monitor and understand if you're doing the right thing or not. Great transition over to your program, Coach. Give us a little promotion of Hope College, the baseball program, as well as the college itself with academics and where it's located, and kind of the focus, the academic focus that it might have.
Yeah, it's an easy sell for me. I think institutionally, our goal is to be the finest Christian liberal arts college in the country, and location-wise, right on the banks of Lake Michigan.
Yep.
It's absolutely beautiful here in West Michigan. We're spoiled rotten with our landscape, and Holland's a beautiful community. So where we're located and the people that we have, um, we think is certainly something that people are looking
It's
for.
an easy sell, that's for sure.
Yeah, easy sell. That's thanks for giving me that. That's what I was looking
Yep.
for. I think in terms of community support that we get, we're in the top 3 or 4 in the country each year, and in really attendance at all of our sporting events. So we have a lot of people that care.
That's great.
Whether we win or lose. And then, we're a Phi Beta Kappa institution, so academically we're very, very sound. High standards there academically. From a baseball standpoint, we've had a lot of success. And I would love to tell you it's because I'm the coolest guy on the planet, but that's not true. We get kids that want to come in here and compete like crazy and be student athletes and do it for the love of the game. And the tradition was here long before me, and my hope is that it's here long after I'm done. And we are fortunate that we get to come in and be a small part of that. But we've won a lot of games, and we've won 10 championships. But at the same time, it's about providing transformational experiences to the young men in our program, and we hope that they develop relationships that'll last forever.
That's awesome.
Those are the two things that we want to come out of this program. And we talked about relationships that time and miles can't come between.
Yeah. No,
And
I think that's awesome.
what we really, truly want in our program.
Stu, it is a Christian college. So is your reach a little bit greater than what you would tend to see at other smaller schools? When you do recruiting, is the recruiting kind of nationwide, or is it more localized?
We haven't been real national, I wouldn't say, as much as some of the other Christian liberal arts colleges that maybe you're thinking of.
Okay.
But I do think it helps us with that 10 to 15% that maybe other institutions aren't getting. We had record enrollment this year. We had, I think we enrolled 960 freshmen. So at a time when enrollment in some institutions is down,
Yep.
we had record enrollment.
That's awesome.
And I think that's a tribute to what we're doing as an institution. Not that we're better than other places. I just think that we still are a place that kids want to come to.
That's great. That's great. Well, you're part of that, Coach.
Well, I'm lucky that I get to be a part of it. I'm thankful for that every single day.
You said your wife is kind of the team mom. And I appreciate your shout out to her, because I think that's one thing that gets lost in the shuffle of the high demands of coaches today is the significant other, the person that's probably the rock in most coaches' lives. And I'm starting to hear it a lot more of, I can't, I couldn't do it without my wife. Just kind of as we wrap up, what are some of the things? What does that mean to a player that may be looking at Hope College? Kind of a feel of a home away from home kind of attitude. Is that kind of what you guys are looking for? Expand on that a bit.
I think maybe just another person that they can count on,
Yeah.
who's not me. It's a different voice, but when we came here 30 years ago, we said that this has to become a way of life and not an occupation,
Right.
or we're never going to be able to do it the way that we want to be able to do it. And for her, she's worn some different hats in the admissions office, and she is now the admissions athletic liaison.
Okay.
So we go to everything, Eric. We go to every single sport. She knows kids in each sport that she helps. She helps with a lot of things, but she helps in the recruitment process with a lot of our athletes. And I think just having someone that's willing to go the extra mile,
Yep.
which she displays that every single day. And that's not just with baseball kids, that's with kids in general. So she certainly has a heart for helping young people.
That's awesome.
That's kind of been, mission's probably too strong, but that's been our life goal here, as being employed at this institution.
Well, I would say it's a mission statement. It's a mission statement of the Fritz family, right? And I love what you said. In order to do this the way that we want to do it, it has to be our life, not our occupation. And that right there is a great place to kind of wrap things up, Coach. That is what I'm going to take from this interview. And I asked you early on kind of what makes you different. I believe that that's what it is. I mean, this is your life. It's been part of your being. And that is what success really looks like. And I think at the end of the day, Coach, that's where your players are going to see you, and it's kind of be the legacy that you're going to leave at Hope College. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today, sir. It's been an honor of mine, and I hope that we get to do this again.
I appreciate you having me on, Eric. I really do.
Well, thank you very much. Take care. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.